When workers negotiate their wage with an employer, they negotiate the hours they will be working, not only the wage. The implicit assumption here is that the worker will work as hard as they can, right? In practice, however, that's not how the world works. Workers want to minimize the effort for the money that they get and for the tasks that they perform. And firms want to do exactly the opposite. Firms want to maximize effort for the money that they pay to the workers, right? We resolve this conflict with the help of the labor discipline model. Now, in the model, the firm is trying to maximize effort for $1 of wage compensation. This problem is actually equivalent to minimizing the costs given a level of effort which is feasible to the workers. Right? So let's start with a level of effort that was feasible for the workers. If you're not sure why the best response curve for a given wage offer looks like this, please go back to the introductory video of the model. The key here is to realize that workers do work harder when they're paid more, but hard work becomes increasingly difficult at higher levels of effort, even if firms pay them more. And now, as a result, the marginal rate of transformation of wages into effort constantly declines. Now, think about it this way. $1 of compensation enters a production function for effort as a factor of production. Right? So as more dollars are put into production of effort, the productivity of each dollar starts to decline. In other words, if you're unemployed, an extra $1 of compensation can elicit a large work effort from you. However, if you work at your capacity, then no additional compensation can extract a much higher effort from you. So how do we solve the model? Let's start with any point on the worker's best response curve. This is point C. It certainly sits on some isocost line for effort, right? So the firm is paying a very low wage and gets some extra effort from the worker. But is this the best that the firm and the worker can do for themselves? Not quite. Let's look at point A and compare it to point C to understand why. Point A pays the worker nearly twice as much money as point C, right? So, however, it extracts from the worker more than twice the effort. And as a result, the firm saves money per unit of effort relative to point C. And at the same time, point A is feasible for the worker, so they will be happy with it and will accept the higher wage. Note also that if we draw an imaginary effort isocost line from the origin through point C, it will lie to the right of the one we see in this graph. In turn, this means point C is more expensive for the firm than point A. In addition, we know that in equilibrium, the marginal rate of substitution is equal to the marginal rate of technical transformation. Now, in the context of this model, this means that the rate at which firms are willing to substitute dollars for effort to stay equally well off is the same as the rate at which workers can physically transform dollars into effort. Any other point is not equilibrium. Let's see why. For example, point C. Point C is on an effort isocost line which is to the right of the original one. Right? So this means even though the firms are paying a lower total wage bill, they're worse off than before. This is because the effort that they get for the wage bill is so low that it's very expensive to keep those workers. So we better pay them higher wages to make them work a bit harder, and we gradually move to an effort isocost that is similar to the one running through point A. However, let's keep thinking. Can we really keep pushing the cost per effort down beyond point A? Take, for example, point B. At point B, the firm is much better off than at point A because the effort it gets for $10 is 0.7. But this effort, look at it, this effort is infeasible. It is wishful thinking. The best you're going to get from a worker at $10 per hour is less than 0.5 level of effort. So, although the firm would love to have workers who give it their best 70% of the time when it pays them $10 per hour, this is not feasible here. What is possible, however, is that the worker's best response curve changes when the economy and when the rules of the game change. So, this is what we'll explore during the live lectures and the seminars this week. But now, it is time we conclude that what we have learned about the firm when we stopped thinking about it as a purely black box, when we looked at it as a collective of owners, managers, and workers who don't necessarily have the same goals. The summary of this week comes next. Thanks for watching.